From the campus of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. I'm Brian Perez, and here we are live on this Thursday, the 27th of June, 2024. Give us a call if you've got a question for us today about the Bible, the Christian faith, just about anything that's on your mind. The number to call is 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. That's the same number you see if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. And if you would also like to send us a question online, you can do that using Facebook Messenger or by filling out the form on the Pastor's Perspective page of our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. But the best way to get an answer is to call us when we're here live, like today, till 4 at 888-564-6173. Or as Ed Stetzer and I were joking yesterday, not joking because it's true, 888-JOHN-173. That's what it all spells out to.
Did Ed figure that out on his own, or did you?
No, I told him.
Yeah, tell him, yeah.
But, yeah, because he asked, does it spell out anything? And I told him, yeah, it's John 17:3. So we talked about it.
Was he excited about that?
He was so, oh my goodness.
I bet.
He was ecstatic. But anyway, here we are. Call us up, 888-564-6173. And answering your questions today, we've got Brian Broderson, whose voice you just heard. He's the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa here in Southern California. And also in studio with us today, whose laugh you just heard, Bobby Conway, the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, author of the book, which is right here in front of me. Does Christianity Still Make Sense? Available on Amazon and Kindle and Audible, and also here at the Chapel Store of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. So next time you're in town, come pick up a copy. Bobby, good to have you here in the studio, man.
It's so good to be in studio with you guys, for sure. It's been too long, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to connect with you guys and cut it up and answer questions today.
And we are so delighted that you're here. And it's so good to see you. Although we've been at the same conference for all week, and this is the first time we actually had any time to talk to each other. So,
right.
Yeah, but yeah. So, we talked about this conference. We told people about it on the program, and now we have done it. We've had it
concluded.
Yeah, and boy, we had a fantastic time. And Ed Stetzer, speaking of Ed, he spoke yesterday morning before he boarded a flight to Korea last night.
Oh boy!
And he just did an exceptional job. All the teaching sessions, the main teaching sessions, were just fabulous. Sometimes you go to a conference and there's, I don't know, however many main session teachings, and some are great and some are okay, and then some are like, I don't know about that one. Man, this one was like every single teaching was just fantastic. And we went through 1 Peter, so that really, kept the continuity going through that epistle together. But yeah, it was just fantastic. Yeah. Great time.
Do you enjoy going to conferences yourself in general, or do you just recognize the value of them so you put them on?
Yeah. Well, I do enjoy them because, they're taxing, and, I haven't slept for like 4 days, but,
Yeah.
And because, you're just giving out because you're basically just talking to people the whole time. And of course, when you're leading a conference, then you're doing a bunch of other stuff too.
Exactly.
You're emceeing, you're doing a panel, you're doing a teaching, you're doing a workshop, which are all the things that I did. But I do believe in conferences, and I have experienced the benefit of them myself, and I see the benefit in other people's lives, It's at conferences sometimes where there's such great, clear, prophetic words that are given that can actually just change a person's life, change their trajectory in ministry, things like that.
So true.
Like even times where you and I are just having a conversation, and as you've said, I've said things that have really impacted you. Mm-hmm. Well, that happens at a conference frequently.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the value. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I bet you're ready to get a nice night of sleep, though, because you told me you had a 6-hour meeting to evaluate things today. And it's true, because when I speak at conferences, it just kind of weighs on me even beforehand. Mm-hmm. But because I'm an introvert, I can get tired extra quick. So thankfully God's given you more extroverted energy, because I don't know how you'd have the responsibility of the whole and your messages and keeping up with everything. I probably would go jump off of a bridge at the end of the conference. So
I think it's the Zen thing that the Lord's given me.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. But anyway, it was a great conference. Great time.
Plans for next year already, or?
Well, date for sure. Be almost the exact same dates. It'll be the 22nd through the 25th versus the 23rd through the 26th. So of June. Yeah. So nothing specific, but just get the dates on the calendar and see what happens. There's a lot can go on between now and a year from now.
Yeah,
so
that's for sure.
Yeah, and I already have a half a dozen other conferences on my schedule between now and then. So.
Have you thought about inviting Kenneth Copeland to come in and be a guest speaker at next year's?
I've talked to him, and I just said, that dance routine you guys are doing over there at your church, man. If you could just bring that to our conference.
Can you come and incorporate?
I don't know why. Every time I see those videos of people going wild dancing at church, automatically I just go, I got to send this to Bobby.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
I don't send it to anybody else. It's just, I send it to you.
And I think of you too. You and I ought to just go visit one of those conferences just for humor.
That would be great.
Just to go and observe.
They're doing a jig in those places.
Oh, it's just wild. So goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
People are like, what are they talking about? It's like, maybe you should post what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. But you're talking like people getting really exercised, worked up. They start breaking out and dance, and
that's some serious dancing.
It's just
wild.
It's just a different experience for sure.
It's a different culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's for sure. All right, 888-564-6173. Let's start with a question that was sent in on Facebook. And Carla from Maryland wrote in 2 questions from Carla, one specifically for you, Bobby. I teach weekly Bible studies, and I purchased Bobby's book and study guide, Does Christianity Make Sense? I'm considering using it as my 4 to 6 week Bible summer series. However, I'm having trouble locating the videos that correspond to the lessons in the book. Is there a video that shows us how to use the book, study guide, and video together?
Okay, so that has been a challenge, honestly. Even for me, what Tyndale ended up doing is they only published the video series that my son and I did through Tyndale House. So you have to go to Tyndale.com. And if you were just to go in a Google search engine and just type in Tyndale, Bobby Conway video series, it'll pop right up. But that is the way they did that. And so I don't know why it's not sold in conjunction with the study guide, because on Amazon you can get a study guide like the one that we're looking at. Or I don't know why there's not a barcode inside the study guide that you could just zap. So there is a disconnect, and I apologize for that. Even myself in trying to chase this thing down. So you got to go to Tyndale.com and you can pick it up right there.
I guess those things happen. Okay, and here's Carla's other question. Just finished up doing weekly Bible studies on all of Jesus' parables. I concluded with Matthew 13, verses 44 through 52. As I referenced several commentaries from the likes of J. Vernon McGee, David Jeremiah, etc., along with commentaries in the study Bible itself, it was evident that there were 2 different interpretations of these passages, particularly regarding who the main characters are in the parables. The lesson wasn't as smooth as my previous classes, as I shared both interpretations with them. I felt like I didn't do an effective job this time, not as much feedback from class. The class was still complimentary and said it was very deep. 2 questions. How do you interpret these passages, and how do you address your class when there are different interpretations of passages within the Christianity? I'm not sure what that means. And bonus question, do you have any go-to commentaries that you prefer?
So what's the passage?
Matthew 13.
Matthew 13. Okay, so it would be the parables.
44 through 52.
Right, yeah. I don't know. I mean, some of the parables in there, I'm pretty clear on the sort of the different views of what's being said. I'm not sure exactly on that one, but I do think that as you look at them, so for example, like with the parable that talks about the kingdom of heaven as like a mustard seed. I think when you look at it, I think at face value, you would think, okay, the kingdom of heaven, it is something that starts out small, maybe even seemingly insignificant.
Yeah.
But then it becomes something very significant through the process of time. Okay, I think, just reading it initially, I think almost everybody thinks that that's what it says.
Yes.
But then somebody else comes along and says, well, actually, no. What this is talking about is that there's going to be this mustard seed that turns into a tree that has birds lodging in its branches. And what this is really talking about is a monstrosity, an overgrowth of something that was never intended to be what it becomes. And the birds signify, because in other places in Scripture, birds are kind of equivalent to demons or devils. So it's talking about the infiltration of evil into the church. Mm. And so I look at it and I think, well, I mean, I can see that because some of the parables actually do say that. Jesus does tell us that there's going to be the tares in the wheat and so forth. So, but then I look at that parable and I think, to me, it just seems like Jesus is saying what, if we go all the way back, would absolutely seem to be like obvious. Like Jesus is walking around the Sea of Galilee with 12 guys that are not real impressive. Yeah. And this is the future of the world. This is the hope of the world. Who would have ever dreamed that would be the case? And who would have ever dreamed at the time that little group of people, that we would be related to them today in 2024, that we would be spending our entire lives consumed with the things that they were consumed with. Yeah. So to me, I think that's actually a better interpretation. Yeah. That the leaven in the lump, it goes through and it leavens the whole lump. There's places in Scripture where leaven is symbolic of evil. Yep. But not every place. Yeah. So I think the obvious understanding would be like, this is going to start small and it's going to go bigger than you could ever dream.
And the nice thing too about a lot of the parables is they do kind of, offer some insight where
they interpret themselves.
Exactly. They interpret themselves, and that can be helpful for us when studying the parables. So look for, is Jesus giving the explanation away? And then sometimes you got to keep reading maybe on, because the disciples will come up to him and they're asking the same question we are, like, hey, what was that all about? And then he says, well, here's the explanation. Yeah. But then you get people that'll come along and go, oh, well, you know what, the Bible, it's not accurate because it's been now shown that the mustard seed isn't actually the smallest seed. So Jesus obviously is an omniscient. And I'm going, he's not trying to teach botany here. This is where we get so over the top. And so we got to just step back, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's been one of the so-called proofs that the Bible can't be inspired and that Jesus couldn't have been God, because he obviously doesn't know what the smallest seed is in the whole world.
In the whole world, yeah. So sometimes like that, right? I mean, it's the smallest known scene to that group of people that is in front of you. Yeah. He's not trying to operate like a botanist in that moment. Like, hey, we all know in this area, kind of like this seed right here, it's small, but it does big things. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about some go-to commentaries? What are some of your favorites?
Go-to commentaries.
You know which one I love is Tom Constable. Have you seen Tom Constable's notes?
No.
Okay, so he was my seminary professor, and all of his commentaries are for free, and it's called Sunlight.com, I think. But if you type in Tom Constable, he's done commentary from Genesis to Revelation. Really? And what I love about his resource, number one, it's free. But sitting under him, Well, it kind of reminded me of you. You're very zen, very humble, very insightful, all the good things, right?
I like that. Thank
yes, all those good things. But what I love about it is he really does a good job of letting you know when you come across a particular parable, here's the different main interpretations, and then kind of here's what, I think it's saying for these reasons. And then he even offers quite a bit of application through the process, which I find is very insightful as well. But it's called studylight.org. Tom Constable notes. It's fantastic. It's a go-to one of mine.
Boy, that's great.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. Check it out sometime just for fun in your study. See if you like it.
Yeah, and there's a number of good commentaries that you might pick up. A lot of times, like a study Bible will have study Bibles have study notes, additional study notes, and a good study Bible can have great information.
Yeah.
Or you pick up a commentary. There's let's just say there's commentary that's a full Bible commentary, or maybe a full New Testament commentary. It includes commentary on in one volume. It includes commentary on all the books of the New Testament. For example, the Bible Knowledge Commentary out of Dallas, right?
I love that one.
And that one's good. Or then there's individual commentaries that you might like a particular preacher or an expositor, and you think, oh, I want to study what this guy has to say about Matthew. And so, you pick an individual commentary.
Do you like the ESV Study Bible?
I'm not the big study Bible guy. Yeah. My wife is the big study Bible gal.
Yeah.
And Cheryl has literally read through 7 study Bibles, word for word. Every word in the Bible she has read. Not just in the biblical text. She's read every note, every footnote, every little section that is, put. It's unbelievable. I'm just like, how do you do this? And recently she just finished, she had this, when we were in Israel, somebody gave her like a Bible that was kind of oriented toward Jewish people.
Yeah.
And she's had it in the house for years. And she finished, I think, a CSB study Bible or something. And then I said, so what are you going to read now? She goes, oh, I have this Jewish Bible. I'm going to read this. So sure enough, over the last year, she makes her way through this whole, Jewish Bible. And then she finishes. And I'm like, where are you going to go this time? And she comes out with this gigantic archaeological Bible. And that's what she's reading now. She's reading the archaeological Bible. So
yeah, that's fun.
She's going through her devotions in her Bible, reading in the text. But then she's telling me, did you know that in Sodom and Gomorrah, they found this and that? She's giving me all this archaeological information.
Oh, that's a blast.
All the time. So
that's so much fun. Even I think of Tremper Longman and D.A. Carson.
Yeah.
So they've put together tools for, I think Tremper Longman does the Old Testament, and then Carson does the New Testament. And these are basically books that you would have that would show you the best books to read on the particular book of the Old Testament or the New Testament. And so what I like is D.A. Carson, for example, he would say, you know what, here are the top they take it like this. Here are critical commentaries. Here are, good commentaries for like a pastor, and here's real practical commentaries. So they're kind of looking at 3 levels, and then they give the pros and the cons, and okay, so then out will come Douglas Moo is the go-to one for the book of Romans, or you would think about Craig Keener for the book of Acts for commentary, because one thing I think for our audience to be aware of is there is no one individual who's going to be able to write a commentary on every book of the Bible as good as finding those who are scholars on a book or two. Yeah. And so that's where the NIV Study Bible, they assign the different people to write the commentary for the books, the scholars that are scholars on the book of the Bible that you're studying, versus like a MacArthur commentary that like a lot of people will find value in. He's doing the commentary on all the New Testament.
Yeah.
And that can be fine, but it's nice to be able to get those perspectives of people who've given their life to studying a book or two.
Yeah, and like the Bible Knowledge Commentary. And I say the Bible Knowledge Commentary because it is quite simple, which in a commentary that's really helpful, right? And it is written by the faculty of Dallas Theological Seminary. Now, this was written quite a few years ago, so guys that are no longer
Walford and
with
Pentecost
and so forth. Yeah, but it's good stuff. So, yeah. I mean, I have a few commentators that they're like my go-to guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to look for something by this guy.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times you're just looking more specifically, like you said, for, okay, I want to study the book of Acts. Who's the go-to person for the book?
Mm-hmm. You know what's been nice lately, though, at this stage, and when I was younger and I started preaching, I mean, it would be like 30, 40 hours you're working on a message. And it's almost like embarrassing to say this, but like I can put together a message pretty quick now.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so nice is I've just almost freed myself up from feeling like I used to get out like 4, 5, 6, 7 commentaries. I'd read through every single one before I did it, and I would just be pregnant with information. And I'm at the stage now where I get out my Bible, and unless I've got like a question because I'm stuck, I'm pretty comfortable just reading the Bible and getting to the point as quickly as possible and building a message, and it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I just did a workshop yesterday at the conference on sermon preparation. Me and a friend, Mike Neglia, we did it together, and that's exactly what I said. You know, I said, I'll take you back 40 years when I first started. Every time I was teaching a book of the Bible, I had at least 10 commentaries, and I felt like I had to read every word in every one of them.
I did,
and then I would have so much information in my brain, I didn't even know how to get any of it out. So
you were constipated mentally by the time you got to the pulpit.
Totally, yes.
Either that or just do a 4-hour message on a Sunday.
Yeah. Well, I did that too occasionally. But yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, now it's like I have 2, maybe 3 commentaries on my desk, and they're different kind. There's like exegetical commentary means it's looking just really at the text and sort of not a whole lot of like stories or anecdotes and things like that. But then there's a devotional commentary that has more of that type of stuff. But then there's a background commentary that's kind of looking at, the culture and some of the archaeology and stuff like that. But, those sit on my desk, and sometimes I open them and sometimes I don't. And, a lot of times I'm just like, I got my Bible. I've been teaching it for 40
all these years.
It's like I ought to know something by now.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm more apt now. So when you're young and you're preaching, you're studying every single verse, every single word, turning it all over. And at this stage, it's kind of like maybe there's a verse or two that I want greater clarity on, and I'll go and I'll get more insight onto that verse or a particular problem passage. I might look into that a bit more, but some of the verses are more self-explanatory. It's like, it's nice to be able to just give yourself permission to save yourself time. Go, you know what? I've been to seminary. I've been preaching a long time. Let's be, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. So my friend asked me in this class yesterday, he said, so why do you find that you're not using commentaries as much as you used to? And I wanted to make it clear that I'm not anti-commentary at all.
No,
I'm totally pro. I said, but honestly, it's like, I read them and then I think, I could have written this.
Yeah, you can write your own commentaries now.
I could have done a better job. So why do I want to read stuff I already know for?
Yeah.
But then sometimes there is one sentence that you just go, oh my gosh, that was it.
Yeah.
I read 10 pages, and this one sentence is my takeaway.
Is your takeaway, yeah.
And don't forget the Kenneth Copeland commentary, of course.
Oh, jeez.
That's Bobby's favorite. He's actually going to co-author a commentary.
Oh, perfect. That'll be his next book.
Oh, speaking of the whole, in Africa, Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland have had the biggest impact. It's like they're totally, taken, I think, bad fruit in that culture. But as I mentioned, Mike Winger did a piece about 3 months ago on Benny Hinn, and it just exploded. Well, this past week on Mike Winger's podcast channel, he had Costney on. And Costney came on for 2 hours, who's the nephew of Benny Hinn. It was a fascinating discussion listening to Costney just say, Mike, what you shared was spot on about my uncle. And this is just, God is really using an apologist, Bible teacher like Mike Winger to help expose some of this stuff and bring this stuff down.
And so we got our inside joke here with Kenneth Copeland, but there's probably a lot of listeners who go like, who are you guys talking about? And Benny Hinn, a lot of people know the name Benny Hinn. I think he's probably universally more well-known. Copeland has got his places where he's very well-known. But these guys would be part of the Word Faith movement. The prosperity gospel would be their thing. God wants you healthy. He wants you wealthy. And they, both of them, have been downright heretical. Now, we use the word heretical very sparingly here. We want to be wise when we use it, because a lot of people are called heretics and they're not even remotely heretical, myself being one of them. But I think with these two guys, I mean, some of the stuff they said, it is heresy. This is
goodness.
like, I mean, Benny Hinn at one point, remember Benny was teaching that there were actually 9 persons in the Trinity?
You sure do.
9 persons in the Trinity. Yeah, well, each person of the Trinity had 3. It's a Trinity. So there were 9. And then,
but does it like expound, and maybe each of those has I don't know.
No, it's just he stopped at 9.
He stopped at 9. Okay,
thankful for that.
Yes.
But then Copeland. I remember hearing Copeland say this. His whole thing is like we're little gods.
We're gods, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, Jesus said, "I am." And he said, and when I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and I say, I am too.
Boy.
Okay, well, so basically you're saying you're God. Okay.
That makes heretical. Me a little, I kind of want to take a step back from him and get out of the way, in that moment. Yeah.
Unless, of course, he's dancing. Then you want to jump right in and
dance with him. 888-564-6173 is our number. Carla, thank you for sending in your questions. By the way, we found Bobby's video series on Tyndale. So if you go to Tyndale.com, and Tyndale is spelled Tyndale, Tyndale.com, go to the little search bar there, type in Bobby Conway, and you will see the streaming collection or the streaming series. You can purchase each each session either individually, or you can buy sessions 1 through 6 all at once, cheaper that way per session. But again, that's at Tyndale.com. Do a search for Bobby Conway. So there's only 6 sessions, right?
There is only 6 sessions, and they're short too. I mean, they're like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. They're really designed to use in a small group setting. And that can be really helpful. I think for moms and dads, too. I mean, this book can be helpful for parents to say, you know what, as a family, let's just kind of be proactive with our kids, and let's walk them through these type of answers to the questions in this book. Because I think if they'll go through it, they'll get the timeless questions, the problem of evil, why is Jesus the only way to heaven? But then the questions that are overwhelming today. And so giving, only 4% of Gen Zs, according to, I think, Barna Group, have a Christian worldview. And that is catastrophic. And many student ministries and churches, the student pastor doesn't have a worldview. And then they don't really know what that is. And by worldview, we're talking about, like, in the past, it used to be you hold out heaven and hell before people, and you tell people that they're a sinner and that Jesus died to forgive them, which is true. And so I want to be forgiven. I want to go to heaven. But that was kind of like, now I'm a Christian. But we really began to see that, you know what, we need to have a Christian worldview. And this is, how does my Christian beliefs affect the way that I understand the arts, politics, film, marriage, relationships, sexuality? And by giving your kids a proper worldview to how to think Christianly about all things as they go into the culture, then they'll be less apt to adopt the ways of the culture that is going to be ready and willing to certainly hand a worldview off to them if we don't get proactive.
So how's the book doing?
Well, I just looked right here because I'm just pulled up right now. It's on Audible right now. It's sitting at 44 and 45 and in the apologetics area. So,
Great.
It's in the top 100 right now.
Good.
So that's good. But I don't know. That changes every hour. So it could be at 5,000 in 30 minutes. So, but
Or it could be number
it's
one.
doing good in the moment.
Let's make it number one. Let's make it number one. So yeah, you can find Bobby's book on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, here at the Chapel Store of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. But if you want the book and the study guide and the video series, might be best to head on over to Tyndale.com, do a search for Bobby Conway, and buy them all. Start your Christmas shopping early. That would be a good idea. All right, we'll be back in a little bit. 888-564-6173. We're back on Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America. I'm Brian Perez, and we are here till 4 p.m. Pacific time on this Thursday, the 27th, to answer your questions at 888-564-6173. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway are here in the studio to answer your questions. You don't have to come to the studio to get your question answered. In fact, don't. There's security guards and guard dogs and everything, and they won't let you up. No, I'm joking. 888-564-6173. It's just easier that way. Just call.
Kind of joking.
Kind of joking.
I saw some guard dogs out there.
Oh, man. Yeah. Woof, woof. 888-564-6173. Let's go to the phones. Where's Ida? Ida hung up. Okay. Where's Amanda? Amanda hung up. Okay. Let's go to Marilyn in Yucaipa, California. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Marilyn.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hi. What's your question?
Here's my question. I have a 9-year-old. I have 2 grandsons, but the 9-year-old asked me last Sunday, we're spending time together, how did, when God created Adam and Eve and they had the 2 sons, where did all the other people come from? I kind of know the answer because I'm a Christian, and I wanted to give him an adult answer. I need an answer that I could give him in child language.
So there were only 2 children. They were both boys. So how did everybody, because you need a boy and a girl, a man and a woman for these things to happen.
That's why you asked the question, right.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, this is really simple, Marilyn. So if you read a little bit further into Genesis, in the 5th chapter, it'll answer the question. It'll say that it'll talk about another son of Adam and Eve named Seth, and then it says, and they had many other sons and daughters. So because the Bible is not it's not a history book in the sense of let's just write general world history and tell you the things that happened. The Bible is what you call redemptive history. So it pretty much sticks with people who are relevant to the redemptive story. So in this case, it's implied that there are daughters involved, that there are women involved beyond Adam and Eve, but it's not specifically stated because the primary concern has to do with Adam, Eve, their first 2 sons, Cain and Abel, but then Seth, who comes along later, and he becomes the one who's going to carry on the redemptive line. So that's the redemptive history there. So simply, you can tell your grandson that, there were other children of Adam and Eve. There were boys and girls, men and women, and yet the Bible just doesn't record that because it's not important to the purpose of the story at the time.
Does this help you, Marilyn?
It does. I can say that to him, but I'm going to throw another little challenge. Knowing his mind, you'll say, so were they brothers and sisters?
Yes, they were brothers and sisters. And at that time in the history of the world, this is how the population increased. Now, there came a point in history where God said, no longer are you to have your brother or your sister as your husband or wife. That time is now past, and now here's the new way it works.
Very good. Marilyn, thank you for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective at 888-564-6173. Let me do another one that was sent in online, this one from William. I visit a non-denominational church in Iowa when I go on vacation. I recently found out this church has no elders or deacons, and there was an incident where the pastor's wife demanded the head of security to open the church after midnight one evening. He refused. He was fired the next day. So my question, should churches have elders, and would this incident be something they would be part of sorting out? Bobby, what do you say?
So I look at elders as pastors. So I think that God has raised up, people that are called to be elders, pastors, to help lead the church. I don't know why she needed in the church at that time of the night. So it would be hard to speak into that situation. I mean, I could be given a bunch of situations where maybe she had to run to the church because there was an emergency and they needed to get in a file and it was the only place it was. Or, maybe there was something inappropriate happening. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So if you're a pastor's wife and you have a legitimate reason to get in the church and somebody doesn't let you in the church, then that could be problematic. I would say when you're saying that this church doesn't have elders, this is often because many people are making a distinction between elder and pastors. So some would say you have pastors and elders. And for me, I would say in that situation, if you were to talk to the leadership, they'd probably say, well, pastors are elders. And so we do have them.
Yeah, and maybe,
William?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe the question is like, if there were elders or other people in charge, would this kind of thing happen? Mm-hmm. Or would they let this kind of thing happen? Would they let this person, let's just say they wanted to get in for reasons that they didn't really need to get in for, but they were the boss's wife, so you let me in here, and if you don't, you're dead. And so the guy says, no, I'm here to guard the door. Nobody can come in. I don't care who you are.
With my guard dog.
Yeah, sad. But then the next day he gets fired. So if you have elders and other leaders in the church, they would weigh in on something like this and say, well, hey, you can't really fire somebody for that. Or they would say, good job.
Yeah.
Or they might even say, well, why, Mrs. Pastor, did you want
Yeah.
to come to the church after midnight? I
Well,
mean,
they
you
might-
would think that
they might say the whole point, I think, is there a need for some accountability for the pastor beside himself?
Yeah. My brain, kind of an ADD moment, but I'm just thinking of like being on a church campus late at night. And a church that I started that I left several years ago, it had a pretty big campus. And, at nighttime, officers sometimes would drive onto the campus just to kind of check things out. Well, one night, a mother was in the nude digging a hole on the campus with their daughter that was probably 5 or 6 years old. And this police officer happened to drive on the campus, and he sees this naked lady with her daughter digging dirt on the campus. And my dad was on staff at the time. And when he told me that, before he even finished the story, I thought, I wonder if the mom was planning to bury her daughter.
Yeah.
And so this officer shows up. Thank God he shows up, and he has to deal with this situation. And apparently some of the demonic things that were happening were so jarring to this man, this officer. I think he ended up quitting his job as a police officer. And I can't remember for sure, but I think that I ended up hearing things like this lady's head he saw like spinning around and around, like all kinds of crazy things, right? Well, needless to say, they took her in, and that's exactly what she was doing. She was she was digging a hole to bury her daughter. Jeez. And I thought, man, thank God the officer came on that campus.
My goodness.
Late at night. So, geez.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, kind
That
of
is crazy.
An ADD moment, but
Yeah, it has nothing to do with
it
what
has
we're
nothing to
talking
do with
about.
it. But it was an interesting story, right? I mean, it makes for good radio for a minute or two.
It's crazy. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
Neither have I.
People do
Yeah,
crazy
geez,
stuff.
it's
yeah.
crazy.
William, thank you for sending in your question using the form on the Pastor's Perspective page at kwave.com. All right, let's talk to Ida. She called back from El Monte. Thank you, Ida, for calling. What is up with you?
You are welcome. I have a concern. So I have my daughter. I just found raw cigarette, one raw cigarette in her purse. And I had been going over this with her, and she had been denying it with me. But until I found this just a few days ago or so. So now that kind of answers what I've been going through, here at home and the atmosphere, and just just being familiar with my environment. I've been saved for 20 years. God's kept me 20 years, and she's also been raised as a Christian, and she's 20 now. So I'm very concerned. Like at this point, I don't even. It's just so discouraging knowing I have to get ready for work and just waking up in the morning. And, I'm just very concerned at this point. What should I do? And I've been asking God to intervene, to give me some answers. She's a hard worker, an excellent person. It's just what she's doing is changing her behavior, like her attitude.
Is it just you, Ida, with her, or
but she's? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
is your husband involved? Is it just you with her?
It's we're both involved, more aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to just not share everything that. It's basically not every time, but he's aware of it also.
Mm-hmm.
So he just became aware of it.
So how have you responded to her?
It just says, look, honey, if this doesn't stop, I know that you're not going to admit it to me in the house that you are doing this, but it's just changing who you are, and I prefer that if you do, that you go and stay with, your friends that are going to, allow you to do this there, because here, this is a zero-tolerant home. Mm-hmm. And you know this, and I just asked you something that is not acceptable here. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want you to think, really good that.
How does she respond to that? Like, does she say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll take care of it. I don't want to move out," or does she say, I don't care what you think. This is what I'm doing. I'm 20 years old.
Such a pattern. Sometimes she's quiet. In the beginning, she would deny it. What are you saying? What are you saying? You're accusing me. I thought, okay, maybe I am accusing you. But then I thought, wait a minute, no. So I had to actually, wait on God and pray about it and stuff. And I just haven't been waking up the best person. I'm like, no, something's wrong. I know that I'm going to go through trials and things, and but this is just something's not right with the atmosphere. I have no clarity and no, I know the home, and I'm like, no.
So you guys,
even at night,
you have told her that this needs to stop, or she has to move out. Have you told her that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you're calling to ask us what we think about that, I think that is probably the only option you have at this point, because I agree with you. You don't want her to be getting high at home. So if she's going to insist that she has the freedom to do that, then I would say that's where you just draw the line and say, okay, well, you can't do that. If she's not doing it at home and she's respecting the home rules, then I would not necessarily say, well, just because you're doing it, period, that means you got to go somewhere else. I think this is where you just need wisdom with each situation to know how to navigate it. She's gonna go out if it is the case that she's doing it somewhere else, she's not doing it at home, but then you end up saying, okay, you can't live here anymore. Well, she's going to go out. She's going to keep doing it, but she might be in a more vulnerable position, not living at home and having security there. So I think it's a sensitive thing that you need to just really think about and be wise with. What do you think, Bobby?
Yeah, I do think that's a great reply there, because more than likely she is going to do it. And then you end up not only, you think you've solved the problem, but you really haven't. And then you've created another problem, a strained relationship with your daughter. And so I would say that it's understandable that, on your premises that you wouldn't want to be smelling her, taking bong hits or whatever that might be. But I would also say, try not to just look at the drug. You want a connection with your daughter that she doesn't just feel like you're instantly just worried about the fact that she's smoking marijuana, but get to the why are you doing this? If there's a way for you to become a safe space for her to open up, because a lot of kids have parents that just freak out when the drugs happen, and then the kids end up being inauthentic with mom and dad because they don't feel like they can be real. And I think that it's a vulnerable spot for a parent, but it's also a vulnerable spot for a kid that's not in the right spot. So I just kind of think if I was in a situation like that, I would focus more on what's causing, where's the emptiness in your life right now? Because when you're using drugs, there tends to be some kind of an emptiness. You're looking for fulfillment, and just almost taking a position of like, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to panic. I want to realize that my child's empty, and my child's trying to fill it. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel good. What's wrong is trying to feel good in the wrong ways. So you have somebody that really just wants to feel good. And we all want to feel good, but but you got to make sure you don't go about doing it the wrong way. So I think you can validate that, hey, I recognize that you'd want to feel good. I want to feel good too, but I recognize that if I make that too much of a priority, then I'll start doing bad things to feel good. And then I have to realize that when I'm doing those bad things, I'm numbing myself. I'm not addressing the real problem. And so is there a way that we can have the kind of friendship that I can journey with you and you can just talk to me about the space you're trying to fill in doing this and what the void is?
What do you say to the parent who would take the opposite approach and say, well, I would rather that my daughter be doing drugs here rather than somewhere else than, have her drink here, have her boyfriend come over here and spend the night, than for her to be out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are hard things. There's the tough love theory. There's, hey, boot him out and let him suffer the consequences. And, maybe this will be the thing that wakes him up. And, sometimes you maybe need to do that. I don't think there's any one size fits all. I think you just have to pray and weigh it out and see. And I think even, Bobby, with what you're saying, I think, too, there is also the possibility that you don't really say anything, because a lot of times they're not going to open up to you and tell you anything anyway. Yeah. So, you could be trying to get like, well, what's going on, honey? And why are you doing this? And they don't, sometimes they're not even thinking. It's peer pressure. It's being part of the cool club. It could be a number of different things. It could be just, misery that this is taking the edge off of, I just am an unhappy person,
Yeah.
And who knows why people are unhappy like that. So I think in some cases you just have to say, I'm going to love you and I'm going to pray for you. And, and I'm going to talk to you when I can, but just know that sometimes talking doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. And as hard as even like, you're right, because what I'm even saying, that's just going to depend on the dynamics of the family, because even, I think about like, my son, he never ended up, like me doing, getting his life a mess like that. But he had a short little season where he, tried out the alcohol and stuff. And he could have easily come to his old man and talked to me about it, because he knows my story, and that I work with people in recovery but during that season he felt a lot of shame. And so he didn't want to open up with me. He did when he realizes this isn't working. So all that to say, I think sometimes we can create an atmosphere to be as approachable as possible. But then other emotions kick in, and that's where the more attuned we are to our kids, like I sense maybe like my son was off during that season. So maybe if I would have had extra insight, because, it's always easier to look through a rearview mirror, maybe I would have been focused on, I just want you to know that if anything's going on, I don't want you to feel any shame in Dad's presence, because the enemy can really get a hold of you on that. Like, I don't know what it is, but there is no magic book out there. And that's exactly right what you're saying, Brian, because sometimes people, they read a book and they think, everybody's different. And so, and every relationship's different. Like, depending upon the tension of the mother-daughter relationship, well, that the tensions in that relationship might look different than the tensions in another relationship. So you have to be extra careful. So you have to really pray for that wisdom.
Ida, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173. Manny and Fontana, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you. So my question was about the words in the Bible that are used to describe hell. From my understanding, there's Sheol, Hades, and then Gehenna. So I just wanted a little bit of clarification on the difference in those words. Are they the same? Are they different? And are any of those the same as the lake of fire that's described in Revelation?
What do you say, Bobby?
So like Sheol in the Old Testament just kind of refers to the underworld, so to speak. Hades then in the New Testament, it kind of picks up on that same idea, like a counterpart New Testament word, and then some have talked about like these two compartments to Hades, one where the righteous are and one where the unrighteous are, and like Abraham's bosom being the good side, but then Gehenna referring to the lake of fire. And so I think that the lake of fire and Gehenna would be more of your synonymous terms, but certainly, you can call it hell. When you think about the idea, though, of hell in the Old Testament, or even from a Jewish perspective, it's not as clear, right? I mean, they talk about like the place of the dead, or, I'll go to where the dead are. And so there's not like this sense of hell like we get when Jesus comes on the scenes. And that's why it's interesting, because for everybody that would just see Jesus as, this is the grace side of things. Well, he's the one that kind of comes on and elucidates really what's going on with all that for us. So,
right, yeah. I mean, as people have said, and I think it is actually true, Jesus, who, of course, came to bring salvation, the love of God, to tell us that God is wanting to forgive our sins, but he's also the one who spoke about hell more than anybody else.
That's right, yeah.
So,
does this help you, Manny?
Yes, thank you very much. It does give me some clarification.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you for calling us today here on Pastor's Perspective at 888-564-6173. Here's a Facebook question from Anthony in San Fernando. Hey, pastors, just wanted to know about Mark 13:32, how Jesus said that only his Father knew the hour. I understand that Jesus is 100% God and 100% human, and that in his humanity, Jesus didn't know the hour of his return, but he's also 100% God. So how is he 100% God if he did not know his hour? What do you think?
Well, Jesus intentionally limited himself in certain areas. He's 100% God, but at the moment of the incarnation, you can't say Jesus is omnipresent, but yet God is omnipresent. But yet Jesus is, he's here in this location. So that's a self-imposed limitation. And so there are a few places where Jesus expresses that he doesn't know, and that's the clearest one. He doesn't know the day or the hour. That's left in the Father's hands. But it's just simply he's expressing from his human perspective and the fact that he's limited his divine knowledge. You think that's right?
Yeah, I like the way Norman Geiser, the late apologist, shared with me how to deal with this stuff. He just says, when you bump into like these type of claims, just you answer it in twos. According to his divine nature, of course he knew, but in his human nature was limited and he wouldn't know. And so how it is that, you could be one person with two natures, and one nature is ignorant, but the other nature, the divine nature, is not. And you would think that the divine nature would overlap that a little bit. So I don't understand that at all, but that's how you explain it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it has to be some sort of intentional self-limitation.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, it's like, how can the omniscience not break through the...
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he must have said, sorry, you can't come through.
Yes.
That might be it. All right. Anthony, thank you for sending in your question on Facebook Messenger. And that's all the time we have on today's episode. So please call us tomorrow if you have questions for us at 888-564-6173. We open up the lines about 7 minutes before 3 p.m. and we would love to hear from you. You can also send in your question on Facebook Messenger like Anthony did, or fill out the form on the Pastor's Perspective page of our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. And to purchase Bobby Conway's book series or his video series, his study guide, you can go to Amazon or Audible or Kindle, or come to the chapel store at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, or as we mentioned earlier, the video series, you can get that at Tyndale.com. Just do a search for Bobby Conway. Bobby, good to see you in the studio, man.
Hey, it was great being with you guys as well.
Come back again.
I'll be back in studio next week.
Yay! Yep, looking forward to it. God bless you guys. Pastor's Perspective was sponsored by Biola University, ranked as the most comprehensively Christian university in North America.